Hey nerds, welcome to another episode of the Nerd Rundown Recap. I'm your host, Eric Hare, and with me tonight is Mr. NRD himself, Darren Stemple.
The beast beneath the boards has been found out.
For sure. Not just a river in Egypt. Today we'll be recapping and offering some thoughts and insights into episode 9 of HBO's series House of the Dragon. You can find us on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, all at The Nerd Rundown. If you would take a few minutes to hit the like and subscribe buttons and leave a comment on the video, it really helps the channel a great deal. Improves the YouTube algorithm, if you will, and gets us more views and all that good stuff. So the title for this week's episode is The Green Council. And, well, Darren, first reactions to the first, well, all right, the first reactions to the show. Just let's talk about that.
To the penultimate episode of season 1. Yeah, my first reaction is maybe they aren't using episode 9 as like the big tentpole episode, and maybe they'll start doing the finale as the big tentpole episode. Doesn't mean that this episode didn't have some incredible story to it, because this one follows the name, the Green Council. We see the Green Council. We see everything in this show about the Greens. And it has a bit of a slower pace to it than what you would think. But really, it's just so dense, the episode. So much happened, and the chase for Aegon was actually kind of fun to watch. It wasn't necessarily like you would think you weren't thinking he was dead or anything, but who's going to get to him first? Because if Otto finds him first, you know, he's going to order the deaths of Rhaenyra. Maybe, you know, it's going to happen anyway. Like the war will happen anyway. But Alicent is trying to not have war, and so the chase was on for Aegon, and she won, and he thinks she could make things peaceful between her and Rhaenyra. So
Yeah.
We'll see about that.
Yeah. Overall, I wouldn't say I was disappointed in the episode, but I didn't really. It wasn't my favorite of the season, so it wasn't my favorite of the season. I'll just say that.
Needed that Targaryen flair, I guess, you know.
Yeah. So a lot. You're correct in that a lot happened. It was a very dense episode. To some extent, there was a lot of moves started happening. You know, we can't. We there's just a lot of stuff kind of moving around, parts and pieces and all that good stuff. So let's get into it. And you know, the episode starts with a young boy kind of running through the halls of King's Landing, and he relays to the servants that the king is dead, that Viserys, long live the king. And can't say enough good stuff about Paddy Considine as Viserys. He really just was tremendous from the very beginning of the show all the way to the end. Just really, really blessed, I think, to have him in that role. He executed it, you know, perfectly, and we will miss his performances in the future. That's for certain. So
yeah.
So Alicent hears the news and tells her father what she misinterpreted as Viserys's endorsement of Aegon to be king. And of course, Otto, who already thought that to begin with, you know, it was like, oh, great. Well, that's just a ringing endorsement of what I was going to do anyhow. So,
like when you get caught in a lie,
right.
But it turns out okay. And you're like, thank God I didn't have to get myself out of that hole.
Right. Yeah. So we get a late night, early morning meeting of the small council, and Otto announces to everybody that that the king is dead, and that his last wishes on his deathbed were that Aegon would be king. And so Tylan Lannister, God bless him, is like, so we're free to do what we were gonna do anyhow, It's like, so we can execute the plan, and Otto's like, yep. And Allison, I think
he
Allison
even puts that's when he put his ball in the thing.
Right.
He had his ball in his hand the whole time, and then he
just dropped it in there. Yeah. My vote is for you to move on to the next round. So I think that's I don't know what that thing is, but anyhow, so Allison, Otto and Thailand and a bunch of the other guys start talking about stuff that it seems like they've had in the can for a while, ready to go, and it's like, hey, we just needed the order 66. Somebody needed to do that, and so that's kind of how they were doing. And Allison's like, wait a minute, like, you guys kind of already had this. Like, she was on board with the plan, but I don't think she was on board with like this level of the plan, like what they're kind of going with. So I think she was a little taken aback from what was kind of already pre-planned and all that stuff. So I don't think she quite knew what was happening there. We do get some resistance from Lyman Beesbury, who's the oldest guy on the council,
master of coin.
Yeah, and loyal to Viserys or to the realm, if you will. I don't know if he's necessarily loyal
or
to
the
Viserys.
Targaryen family.
Yeah. So he says he's really the only one that kind of stands against us, and he's like, this is treason. Like, what you're doing is, like, he named his successor as Rhaenyra, and I won't be part of this. And so Kristen Cole, drives an extra hole in his head through the side with that little ball. So he just kind of smashes his head on the table and kills him. And Sir Harold, who used to be Rhaenyra's sworn sword with the Kingsguard, is now tasked with he kind of draws his sword, and Kristen Cole and him are kind of in a standoff, and Allison kind of diffuses that whole situation. So that was all right. But then she asks her dad, what of Rhaenyra? And so Darren, how does Otto, because you've said from the very beginning that Otto is the Littlefinger, and I don't know if that fits perfectly, but it's good enough, I guess, is really, because he's really his own man at this point, but he definitely is pulling a lot of strings like Littlefinger did. So
yeah, well, a lot of why I say it's not apples to apples that is Littlefinger, obviously, but he's the cunning, the scheming guy on the show. Littlefinger was always a step ahead of everybody, and he rose to massive power throughout the realm because of his schemes, and ultimately it caught up with him. And Otto has been putting schemes to work for the last, goodness, since Jaehaerys. I mean, he was hand to Jaehaerys, so he's the schemer and the plotter. And one of the greatest lines in TV cinema history is Littlefinger's "Chaos is a ladder."
Oh yeah,
quote.
it's a great monologue.
And that Otto embodies that. So that's why I call him the Littlefinger of the story, because he quietly creates chaos with his schemes. And the new chaos is we're not gonna be peaceful with the Targaryens. They will come for us.
Right.
So
right.
It's Sir Harold, he starts like having his awakening, like his Sir Barristan Selmy moment from season 2 before he teams up with Daenerys. Sir Harold's like, I can't be a part of this. And he had a great line. I am I answer, the only authority I answer to is the king's.
Right.
He's not here, so
I answer only to the king.
Yeah.
Yep.
And until there is a king, I have no place here.
Right.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I think he's going to make his way over to the Dragonstone.
Right. Because I mean, Allison says, you plan on killing him, and Otto's basically like, yeah, I am. And Allison's like, this is madness. Like, she's not down with that. Like, she wants her son to be king, but I don't think she wants them to be hunted down and executed. And Sir Harold is like, Otto orders him to go do this, and Harold's like, dude, that ain't part of my charter,
You don't get to tell me that.
Yeah, and my charter is limited to supply and advice only. So, or something.
I love that line
lines.
that Allison had. She's like, "Say another word, and I will send you to the wall." I was like, dang, dude.
Yeah, she's got it going on. So
yeah, she's strong.
Strong. So the council kind of wraps up, and no one really knows that the king is dead at this point.
Right.
But Alicent goes looking for Aegon and realizes that he's missing. She says to Helena, where is he? And her response is, not here. Which, God bless her. She's so great. She's so great. And and then she says, she reiterates the beware the beast beneath the boards, which she
so I was like, jumps up and was like, oh
yeah,
beware.
Right.
Himself.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy. So Otto, so the race begins to find Aegon, and you kind of talked about it earlier when you were discussing your breakdown of the show and stuff. But Otto orders the twins. George R.R. Martin. Sometimes I can't stand the guy, and this is one of those occasions. Like, Otto orders the twins, Sir Erik and Sir Eric.
Some people are like, it's Arik, and I'm like, it's Eric, potato, Eric,
right.
Arik.
Right. So
just an E or an A.
Right. So Sir Eric with an E, and his brother Sir Eric with an A. Eric is the one who was the sworn protector of Prince Aegon growing up. So he's got a pretty good read and has spent a tremendous amount of time around Aegon as a child and as a young adult and all that stuff, and knows what a douche this guy is, and all the bad stuff that he's into. So, so he's got a pretty good idea of what he's doing. So if you're watching the episode, if you go back and rewatch the episode, you can kind of tell these guys apart, because Eric with an E, who is the sworn protector of Aegon, and the guy who's not all that excited about, is the one who's wearing his tunic open. And then he has a slightly longer beard, while his brother Eric with an A is all buttoned up with a shorter, kind of tighter beard. So we'll kind of see if that stays consistent through the rest of the. But if you're rewatching the episode, that's how I tell him apart. So Alicent then. So Otto sends the two twins after the prince, soon to be king. Was it king consort? I guess at this point, because he's
has not been crowned.
Has not been crowned, but he's the king at this point. And then Alicent then charges Sir Criston with finding Aegon as well, because the race is on to see who can get to him first and influence his decision to either kill Rhaenyra and her family or not. And so Aemond is there for the conversation. His brother Aemond.
Can I just say that I know, like, kind of you're supposed to kind of root. It's weird, like, who you're supposed to root for. I really freaking love Aemond.
I do too.
Dude. I'm like all about that guy.
Yeah,
he is awesome.
The problem with Aemond is he is a ruthless, like he would be a ruthless king. He would not.
I see the god flips a coin. The gods flip a coin on the Targaryens, and one lands on one side, one lands on the other. But I think Aegon's the bad side, and I think Aemond would be, a pretty good king. He'd at least be educated, be a warrior. He does things out of love for his family.
Yeah, and he understands the role
Aegon's
of
the douchebag.
He's all about himself. Like, all he cares about is himself, which we kind of discover as we're kind of going through the episode, which is he's into some pretty nasty stuff. He's basically it's pretty clear that he's got some bastards running around as you go through the episode. There's some Targaryen haired babies running around, or young toddlers, and he is all part of the fight club first rule of Fight Clubs, we don't talk about Fight Club, but in this case, we're going to talk about Fight Club because it's a disgusting fight club. If it's two adult men going after each other or adult women going after each other, that's one thing. But they're pitting children, like 8-year-old.
Where they filed their teeth and they grow their nails and like they make them like these monster kids.
To fight each other, and then these people bet on it and cheer on it. It's just really disgusting. And Aegon is all about it. Like that's what he's in love with. So, which is it's pretty disgusting.
My cat's making an appearance on the podcast finally.
Yeah, hey, all right. Wouldn't be the first time we'd have feline on the show.
Ari Gold, everybody. Ari Gold, best name for a cat ever.
Yeah. So cut to a scene of Otto having a quick scene with Larys Strong, where Otto notes that I noticed that you've been spending an inordinate amount of time with my daughter lately. And
we find out why.
Find out a little bit later why. But Larys is pretty, again, another Littlefinger character. Like I feel like he's he fits the very Littlefinger character more so than I think even Otto does.
He's like Varys and Littlefinger combined.
He is, except Varys had like he had the realm as the best interest. I don't see Larys having the realm in the best interest. He has his personal best interest, So watching Larys and Otto have this conversation, Larys then says, there's no reason the many hours that we've spent together can't benefit you. And exactly what two scheming men would say to each other to help themselves out. And so Otto's like, fine, that's fine. So
Larys is like, what do your feet look like?
Right. Yeah, let me see your feet. We don't want to see mine, but so we cut to a scene then of the king being wrapped up, and we see Alicent, and I think this was something I had said last week in the show, and I truly believe it, that I do believe that she loved Viserys. Sure. I think that she loved Viserys. I don't think that she was all about the power and all about all that stuff all the time, that she truly did care for him, and she did love him. And so I think you can see her really, kind of mourning his loss and all that stuff. Then when she goes to speak to Rhaenys, who is still in King's Landing and is locked up in her room. So they lock her in her room, and they really lock up everybody at this point. So they've locked up the whole staff. They put all of them into anybody that's in there that's not part of the Green Council essentially, or the guards, gets locked into the prison, and they're held that way until they can find Aegon, because they do not want it getting out that the king is dead. And so Alicent then goes to Rhaenys and is like, the king is dead. And she kind of offers her an olive branch, if you will. Like, do you want to be on the winning side? Because this is going to happen. Like, Rhaenyra cannot be king or cannot be queen, and Aegon is going to be king. So you can get on the train. And Rhaenys says what? She says she has a pretty good line too. I know. I thought you might like this one too, where she's like, when she spoke back to Alicent. So do you fill us in there on that?
Well, was this really just Rhaenys's power episode? First of all, her getting locked up probably wasn't the smartest idea. You don't want to lock her up. You probably would have just should have just brought her in. Like,
yep.
And like, you know what, this is what happened.
Yep.
Locking her up, and then they have this conversation. I really was trying to figure out whether Alicent was being sincere or not about, you should have been queen, blah blah blah. And then the line where she says, we don't rule, we like must be hungry or something. The line where she says, we don't rule, we guide the men that do, though.
Right.
And then the line from Rhaenys right after is like, bro, you ever seen yourself on the throne?
Right.
What are you doing?
Right.
Why are you not fighting for yourself?
Right.
Which maybe that's like her redeeming quality.
Right.
You know, everybody's so power hungry, uh, so like legacy hungry that all they want is the Iron Throne. And Allison's like, I just want what's best for my kids.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know.
And I
So
think,
that was interesting.
well, and
Strong scene.
that's a great observation, because it comes back later that that's exactly, you know, that's who she cares about the most. Is she knows that if Rhaenyra becomes queen, that it could come down to her children being killed, because
Right. For
they
sure they
represent a threat to her. So I don't know, and I think it's become fairly clear, maybe not super clear, but fairly clear, that Alicent's wish is that Aegon becomes king for the good of the realm, and nobody has to die. Like, I think that's her real, because she's you know, she's trying to square a circle, is what she's trying to do. And she's trying to say, hey, I really want to make it so that my childhood friend, and even Otto calls her out earlier on, is it, you know, your childhood friend that you're trying to save? Is that whatever it is? And I think because she truly does care about Rhaenyra.
Yeah.
Just the night before, they'd had that conversation, and she said, the king and I would love for you to come back. And
Yeah.
now that has totally changed. And because I truly believe that she was being sincere. I didn't see any deception, that she was genuinely tenderhearted at that dinner that they had together.
She was resolved.
She was. And so I think she's trying to figure out a way to have it all. And I think Rhaenys saying that, you know, haven't you ever imagined yourself on the Iron Throne? And you can clearly see that Alicent hasn't. Like,
Right.
she hasn't ever thought of herself on there, you know, that she really has been doing everything for her family and for her children and all that stuff. And so later on in the episode, you'll kind of see Rhaenys put her to the test. Is that really, are you really all about your kids? And you know, and Alicent stands into the breach, I think, and does a really good job. So we'll kind of talk about that a little bit later. So the chase is still on for Aegon through King's Landing, through Flea Bottom, and all that stuff. And so then we get, we finally get a meeting between Otto and the White Worm of Flea Bottom. So, Darren, walk us through kind of that scene as that kind of unfolded, because they've had interactions before, but this is the first time they've actually met. So,
yeah, well, Otto's really it's a Otto sandwich of scenes where he's talking to like the spies of King's Landing, you know, and he's really trying to figure out whether Mysaria is that
yeah,
her name, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mysaria. Now it just sounds weird coming out of my mouth. Mysaria. He's like, you know, are you for real? Or are you just part of this stinking onion?
Right.
There was a lot of root talk in this one episode, or in this one scene actually, but really interesting how Otto had those bookend scenes, or those scenes, that these like two spy scenes where he's trying to figure out who's going to be the one to come out on top. He's, you know, he knows that Mysaria has Aegon too, so he's trying to win that battle.
Right.
But you know, I don't know. It's I was trying to remember how it ended.
She kind of negotiates with him. She says, "I'll give you the prince back, but I have an ask of you as the hand, because you'll have influence over the king." And so she basically says, you know, the only reason why I've kept the prince alive at this point is so that you'll stop the child fighting. Right. You know, that's she's right. Like, I'm done with that. You know, that needs to stop. And she kind of gives him like the nod that, hey, listen, yes, you people are very powerful, but your power comes from the people. And if the people are unhappy with the king, or unhappy with who's in charge, you'll never sleep very well at night, because you do, you know, still depend on the people for everything. So, yeah. So
whoever wins whoever wins over the common folk,
right.
Usually are the really great kings. Jaehaerys, Viserys.
Right. So
Um,
then, and again,
common.
another foreshadowing of something to come later on in the episode, So there was a lot that unraveled in that last maybe 5 minutes of the show, where things
Yeah.
kind of change. But so Otto's men, Erik and Eric, with an A and an E, they get sent and they find Aegon hidden underneath of a table, and a stone table that has like a secret passage in it, and so he ends up coming out, and so they start to take him away, and during their
it was in front of Baelor the dragon.
right.
Is it Balon? What's his dragon's name? It was the biggest dragon of all time. It was also Aegon the Conqueror's dragon.
Yeah.
I think it's Baelor. I can't think of it, but a lot of Aegon the Conqueror pieces coming up later. So I just want to put a pin in that.
Yeah. So don't forget to come back to that pin. So which one was it that we missed the other day? I think we
the Jennifer Lopez.
Yeah, the Jennifer Lopez.
Daredevil.
Yep, J-Lo and Daredevil. All right, so prior to this scene, we did get an argument between Erik and Eric about what to do with the king, what to do with Aegon when we find him, and whether they should just kill him. And the one brother is like, no, we need to defend him. And the other one, who knows him very, very well, Eric, who knows him very, very well, is like, this guy's going to be an awful king. Like, this is not going to be good. We should, for the realm, we should do away with this guy. And, so they start to move him. And then that's when Kristen and Aemon show up, and they are like, hey, we need to take him from you. And the one brother is just like, good luck, brother, and so Kristen and Aemon fight with him and end up, taking Aegon back to the castle. So the queen wins that battle. She gets first crack at Aegon, and stuff. So
interesting part there is what Aegon said to Aemon, where he's like, let's just, I don't want this. I've never been put in a position where I wasn't named the heir. This isn't what I want.
Right.
Let's take a boat, cross the ocean, and get out of here.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the opposite of a reluctant hero. It's like a reluctant bad guy or something, but he's there's an important scene coming up where they ride to the coronation in the carriage, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Go ahead and talk about it.
Well, I was just going to say that, now that she's got him, the queen tells Otto that she's going to do things her way, and she plans to spare Rhaenyra. She doesn't want any bloodshed, but she still plans to put Aegon on the throne. And so, and he kind of says, all right, if you really think things are going to work as you wish, he whispers, which is kind of funny, for those of you who've seen the Princess Bride, it's not quite how the as you wish line is supposed to be delivered. But Alicent, to her credit, is becoming she's becoming more of a hard ass. And so she's like, hey, this is how things are going to go. And so
so Alicent, all passive aggressive. Otto gets all passive aggressive.
Yeah. So then we get probably, well, I shouldn't say probably. What is the weirdest scene of the entire episode? Completely out of place. And it started to happen before I understood what was happening. Like I just don't think about those things because I don't have this particular fetish, but she sits down. Alicent sits down. Her and Larys are in her chambers, and they're having a conversation with each other. And then the conversation stops. Alicent sits down and starts to take off her shoes and her socks, and just has her bare feet on the table. And I was like, well, that's weird. And then Larys sits down, and then I was like, oh, okay, you know. And so Larys, eventually, Mr. Clubfoot himself has a bit of a foot fetish, and he loves to spank it to the queen's 10 digits on the
Second
toes.
spanking it
Yeah,
scene of the year.
yeah, it was pretty bizarre, but but
do we need this?
yeah, but
who are we representing here?
so, but what's really funny is how she kind of doles out the feet a little bit to try and get more information out of Larys, you know. So he tells her, hey, there's a web of little spiders roaming about the city. And she's like, well, you know, maybe if I put my feet up on this stool, that'll do it for you, you know. And then he talks about her handmaiden as one of them, and suggests cutting off the head. And then she asks him for more info, and then that's when she takes her socks off, you know. And he's like, oh, you know, it's
whoa,
yeah,
it's like 12-year-old Darren.
Yeah, and then she turns away because she doesn't want to see what he's doing. But you know, basically, he kind of tells her, "I'll do the deed if you let me do my deed." And so they kind of would seem they go through with it. So Larys is going to take.
Allison's never really had a good sexual experience.
She really hasn't. So, so anyhow, so Larys is gonna take care of the network of spies, and all that. And so then, you know, as later on they kind of cut to a scene of Rhaenys. She's being escorted from her room by a knight, and then Sir Erik shows up, and he's like, this is not what I'm about, you know. He says, I'm here to help you get out here, princess. And so he starts to smuggle her out of the castle and then out into Flea Bottom. And so then we get the scene
along with the common peeps.
along with everybody. So yep,
they're all getting escorted to the dragon pit,
right?
Coronation.
Yep. So we get, you know, at that point then we see the cart scene that you were talking about with Alicent and Aegon riding together to the coronation, and he does look very, very glum, I guess is probably the right word there, or
glummy.
He looks very depressed, and it could be because he just spent the night in a stone table, but I feel it's maybe a little bit more, you know. And he basically is like, I don't want this, you know. I don't want this. And then he says to his mom, he says, you know,
don't want this.
Have you ever even do you even love me, you know? And she looks at him and she's like, you imbecile. You know, like everything that she has done for him, he still doesn't recognize that everything that she's done for him is, you know, everything that she does is for him, and you know, that she loves him that much, and he just doesn't understand it. He can't see past himself, and so they, you know, she says, well, your father wanted this, and then she said, well, and then Aegon kind of goes back and says, no, he had 20 years to name me the heir, and he never did. And she says, no, that's not true. At the last minute, he changed his mind, you know. And she shows him the dagger, Viserys's dagger, and then that's what kind of gives him a chub, I guess, or whatever, because you can see his eyes kind of light up.
He lights up.
You know, once he sees that's going to be...
lights up like Morg watching a zombie movie.
Right. Yeah. So then we cut to the scene of the dragon pit, and Otto is addressing, you know, the place is packed. They've rounded up a bunch of people. They've rounded up, you know, half the town and ushered them all in there and stuff. And so Otto starts to, because the coronation needs to be public, and it needs to be it needs the approval of the people themselves, if you will.
Well, the Hightowers, they're like the Shakespearean type people with it. They like big dramatic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, how can we make this big dramatic thing? And they adorn him in all this. They put him in Targaryen black.
Right.
They give him the Conqueror's crown.
Yep.
I just love how they refer to him as the Conqueror.
Right.
The Conqueror's sword. Blackfire.
Yeah, there's a lot
They
of
want
symbolism.
they
The
want them
symbolism
to
is really
think
heavily.
he's the Targaryen that they need to follow.
Yeah, even though he's a Hightower more than he is a Targaryen.
Right,
So
right.
so
But they know that'll win them over easier because people are going to follow a Targaryen over a
right.
Hightower any day.
So Rhaenys, who's been swept up in the crowd, is watching this, and so what was interesting is you pretty much get you're pretty much watching the coronation of Aegon from her perspective through from the crowd and stuff, and she can clearly see that they're gonna go through with this, like they're really gonna do this, and it's just like, holy smokes. And
Point
so
of no return.
Yeah. And so she kind of ducks out.
She realizes that,
yeah, this is going to be bad for me. And this is going to be bad for my family and my kids. And so, so she ducks out
down these stairs.
Yep. And then, at that point, the ceremony kind of takes place, and it was pretty cool. I mean, they had, that's a pretty, neat kind of symbolism, stuff like that. And Kristen takes the crown and lowers it onto Aegon's head. And at that point, he's official. He's the king. And so there was
loving it too.
Well, what was interesting was a beloved person. I think the crowd would have gone wild right away. And there was this cautious pause from the crowd where they didn't really cheer for him. At least that's kind of how I read that. What do you think? Because like if this was somebody that they wanted to be king and like, you would think that the crowd would go wild. Like the moment that it hit his head, everybody would be like going wild. But there's a pause there where it seems like the crowd is unsure whether or not they are happy with this or not.
Yeah. Oh yeah, because I mean they know that Rhaenyra was named heir to the Iron Throne. They don't know that it's been changed to Aegon, and so at first they're gonna be like, "Oh, what do we? Yeah, okay, we're good." Whatever you guys up there say, because whoever's not here has no say. So that's how it goes, and it's.
And so the crowd starts to go crazy. But then how does Aegon react to that? Because prior to this, he's in the dumps. He's very down about this. But what's his reaction to the crowd's reaction to him?
Like the first time somebody ever gets like on TV and they just go crazy, like they're up on the big board at a football game and they're on the big board and they just like take off their shirt and they just do a big dance. That's Aegon right there. He's never gotten any kind of attention like this. And so it really, really excites him. And, he starts pumping up the crowd, raising Blackfire. And
the crowd loves it.
Of course. Yeah. Cause here's a Targaryen male this is what everybody in the realm wanted.
Right.
Nobody wanted Rhaenyra. So
right.
They're excited. He's got the Conqueror's crown. And then go ahead with what happens next.
Well, then a freaking dragon comes popping up out of the ground. So the beware of the beast beneath the boards is Rhaenys on her dragon, and holy smokes, it is unbelievable. I feel like if you're in the crowd there, sorry, you got smoked by this dragon coming up through the floor. But basically, it was unbelievable. Like, it was super, super cool how she just kind of pops up from underneath the floor. Poor common people are being thrown all over the place. There's rock and rubble and all that stuff, and Rhaenys is like, she's riding on top of this dragon, because I think a lot of people forgot at this point that she's a dragon rider. She is, she's part of the Targaryen family. She was a Targaryen, then she became a Valyrian, and so she is a badass bitch. She is. She's not really taking any chances here. So she is like, hey, she kind of comes towards her and her dragon, kind of, and I can't remember what her dragon's name is.
Miraxi?
Yeah, I can't really remember what her dragon's name is, but
I'll
holy
look it up real
smokes,
quick.
that dragon is freaking awesome. And like all dragons are just really, really cool. But this one, you know, he or she is just off the chain, like ready to go.
Helays.
Yeah, and she has the opportunity to, and this is the kind of challenging questions and dilemmas that a lot of people get into. She knows what's coming. There is a war coming, and all she has to do is loose that dragon. Like, she doesn't even have to do it. All she has to do, you know, the dragon will do all the work for her. And, you know, Alicent stands in front of Aegon. She comes from behind him and walks in front of him and stands in between Rhaenys and the dragon, and Aegon, and is you can see where that conversation that they had earlier about her being a mother, and that would, you know, that kind of comes back. And so she, you know, Rhaenys is kind of just staring at the queen and the new king and the entire family, and you're like, man, all she has to do is push the button and that whole family's gone. It just instantly. And Rhaenys could end the war in that moment, and she doesn't. She doesn't. No. So what did you think? What did you think of? I mean, clearly it would have been a short series. We would not get the other 3 seasons if that had happened. But what are your thoughts on?
It's like her Star-Lord moment, you know?
Yeah. So what was your
it right there.
Like, what was your reaction to, like, did you expect the dragon to come up from the floor? Like, did you see any of that coming or anything?
Because that did not happen in the books. Yeah. So that was a change to the show, and probably should have telegraphed it a little bit. Or I should have been able to telegraph it a little bit better when they kept Rhaenys there, and that should have been like why is she here? And then why is she happy now that she knows she's going to the dragon pit?
Yeah.
And then she's going down the stairs. What could be down there? You know,
right.
It's of course it's Mellie's. So should have known, but man, it was, what a twist, and it was just powerful.
Yeah.
Gosh, it was so powerful. And the way she curls out of that dragon pit, and you see not to jump ahead, but first shot of the trailer is her on Mellie's, and she's flying like some haste in that dragon. So it's one of those scenes that's going to go down in TV history, because it was just, there's a woman breaking through the floor with a dragon. Could have ended the story right there, and because she didn't, all the freaking dragons will go extinct very, very, very soon. So it sucks.
Yeah,
it really, really sucks. It's her Star-Lord moment. She could have, you know, if Star-Lord didn't lose his cool and beat the crap out of Thanos while he was, being hypnotized or whatever you call it.
Yep.
Could have gotten the gauntlet off and saved half the world.
Right. But the emotions,
yeah.
and it's
almost like opposite Star-Lord. Almost.
Yeah. And I think Rhaenys is not a murderer. You know, Rhaenys is not a murderer. And I think that's what it comes down to is, and maybe there's a deeper meaning in that, you know, she would have been a good king or queen. You know, maybe she, you know, if she had been on the Iron Throne, maybe this whole thing wouldn't have happened. Who knows? You know, it just, there's a lot to that. But I think when we look at it, when we watch it, and we say to ourselves, she's not a murderer, you know. And I think that's the key takeaway on this whole thing is that, and her and Alicent having that moment of just, hey, I'm a mom protecting my kids, and you're a mom protecting your kids, and you know, hopefully everybody makes it out of this thing alive, which they won't. But you know, now we get to watch this thing slowly unfold over the next couple of years of you know, of getting us to where we end up. But it's a long, painful road, and there's a lot of bodies in in
I
the
mean, it
wake
gets
of it.
so not even just starting next episode. It's just going to be like a roller coaster ride of just crazy shit. This is like they could have a whole entire season where they have like a battle every episode.
Yeah.
Next season is just going to be bananas.
Yeah. Well, I think if I can say anything, like I said, this was not my favorite episode. There was some
Agreed.
great parts to it. I feel like there have been episodes that had much less action in it, if you will, and sword fights and obviously a dragon coming through the floor, but that were much more intriguing, much more interesting. But this was a necessary episode to put those final chess pieces into place, and I think and then to have them push the start button on the music, and that's what the end of the episode was, is those final chess pieces were put into place, and then they pushed the button. And then as the episode is ending, we kind of see these cutscenes of the house of the white worm is being burned, there's
what we believe would be the White Worm's house.
Worm's house, is being burned, and so that looks like they're trying to dismantle that network of spies and all that stuff. But that's
where I was going earlier with the Otto thing being. We had the two spy scenes, and one with Laris, one with Mysteria, and you can't have two spies. Networks.
Yeah, and he seems to have sided with Laris and his and we'll see if that works out. I don't think that it's going to, but we'll see what happens.
I
So
think so.
Yeah. So
finale next week.
Can't wait. It's gonna be great. We appreciate everyone for hanging in there on the show. I know the original vision for this was supposed to be a little bit shorter of recaps and stuff, but the way we got into a groove just made it so that the shows were just a little bit longer. So we'll kind of work on that as we move through these recaps, I think, with other series and stuff like that. So tune in next week to the Nerd Rundown recaps. Darren, great commentary as always, my man. I love listening to your thoughts and theories on everything. It's always just so dynamite and spot on as far as like where the show is going, and kind of breaking down scenes and maybe picking up stuff that everybody kind of skips over or doesn't really kind of pay attention to. So, and it's hard because there's so much going on in these episodes. So much going on, and
it makes me want to go back. I haven't wanted to do a rewatch of Game of Thrones because I know how it ends and season 8 is so bad, but it's making me want to go back and rewatch Game of Thrones from the beginning to see if I feel like this story is way more dense than Game of Thrones was. But maybe not, and so maybe it's just recency bias in that. But I do believe that next week is just going to be bonkers. There's going to be some bonkers. It just know. Remember there's some big deaths coming up. I'll just say that. That's
and unfortunately, it spares no one. I'll just say that as much as there's a couple rules in TV shows, and this one's going to break a couple of them. So, but I think one of the other things that one point that I kind of wanted to bring up with the show, I did go back and watch Bran Stark's vision that he has when he's having that conversation with what's his name, Samuel about John's parentage. And I did go back and rewatch his vision where he goes back and kind of watches that whole thing, and how Rhaegar and her have that marriage and stuff. Lyanna, and they have that marriage, and it has more meaning to me now, because I think they don't do a very good job, other than Dany and her brother. They don't really do a very good job, I think, in that original series of showing you the other Targaryens, anything about the Targaryens,
I actually made that point. I feel like in week 1 or maybe where we're leading up to the show is like, I now know why they picked this show, because we didn't get any Targaryens in Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
And now getting all the Targaryen back lore is awesome.
Right, because Dany is a Targaryen, but she has really almost zero connection to the Targaryen people because she was the whole thing happened when she was really, really young, and so she doesn't really have. And her brother, who did know a lot of that stuff, is a total douche and
lasted 4 episodes.
Yeah, and gets what he deserved. I think probably
like she didn't even wear black until like season 6 or 7. I think.
Yeah, so So anyhow, I'm actually really enjoying the House of the Targaryens. I really am. That's
why I think this episode lacked a little bit, because it didn't have. I mean, obviously, Aegon and Aemon are Targaryens, but something about I don't even know. Something just more Targaryens is a good thing.
But my point, I think, still stands from last week, which is the High Towers look like Targaryens. The Strongs, if you will, are being raised like Targaryens. So, and they both have the exact same amount of Targaryen blood. One came from the male and one came from the female. And so, one half of that family is being raised by Targaryens and being raised in the Targaryen tradition. And the other was being raised as High Towers, and they don't look the same. And so,
that's it. That is like the most dynamite point ever made on the show is like again, Aemon, I am loving this aged up.
He is
so awesome. And wait till you see what's under that eye patch.
Which I think they alluded to in the trailer for.
He takes it off, but wait till you see what's under there. It's like the color blue.
Well, what's really interesting, and then we'll wrap up the show. If you go back and rewatch the opening credits sequence, it changes this episode. This episode,
it changes every episode.
Right?
Actually, it's been updated every week.
Yeah, but this episode is really, really interesting because you'll see that the different symbols that they're doing and the blood are the different characters, and this has been happening the whole time, but I don't think we've really pointed it out. This one you can see there's for Alicent there's four bloodlines, so there is actually 4 children there. It's not just Aegon, Aemond, Helena, and there is a 4th child that Alicent had.
He has the best name of all time.
Yeah, was it Mark? You spill it because I can't remember.
Darren.
Oh, that's right. That's funny. I thought it started with an M, but I'm thinking of Rhaenyra's other child that starts with an M, and I cannot remember what the name is. But
Darren, who actually was confirmed this week by George R. R. Martin that he got sent to High Tower,
right?
And he will have the bigger role.
He's being raised outside of King's Landing with the Hightower family over there.
Big time role in season 2.
Yeah. Well, thanks, bro. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
This was a fun one. Laugh as always with you and have a good time. So anyhow, folks,
for next week,
like and subscribe to the channel, please. And tell your friends if they're watching the show and they want deeper dives into stuff. Let them know you're listening to the podcast or watching us on YouTube. It really helps. Word of mouth helps, and share it with your friends and share it with their friends and all that other stuff. So it's always nice to kind of get questions in the comments that we can kind of flesh ideas out, because there's some stuff that we don't even pick up on, and we like learning stuff from our fans and all that. So anyhow, we'll see you next week, D, and have a good one. See ya. Bye.
We wearing all black next week.